This is Brian Rosen. We're with Made America in Santa Barbara. This is April 26, 2014. And this is Sandra Marshall, who's running for U.S. Congress. Has a whole bunch of candidates running against her, including Lois Capps, Democrat. Sandra is also on the Democratic ticket, and I believe is more grassroots as opposed to Lois. I want to ask you a few questions, Sandra, and about issues. The first one is about the National Defense Authorization Act that President Barack Obama kind of pushed through, that gives the military the right to detain citizens indefinitely without a trial. And don't you think that's unconstitutional? And how, I would imagine you would be against that.
I am against it. I would have never even considered something like that, taking people's rights away. And unless they were threatening, to kill people or do something really bad, then I would maybe have something. But most of the time, what I've read and heard is that these people are held before they actually know anything. So they're being held while they should be innocent first. And so, no, I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, don't you think it's pretty dangerous to, looking at history and the abuses of government going back to the McCarthy era, of course there's Germany and almost every country in the world. Aren't you afraid when the government gets that kind of power that it's very dangerous, and there tends to be, people are corruptible, aren't they?
Yes, and they could come and do that to any one of us right now. They could, if they oppose what I'm doing as far as running for Congress, think it's a threat and want to silence somebody, they could come up with a case against the person. I'm sure I've done things that might not fit into their approvability. So I think that we've gotten way too serious and created a lot of fear. And I understand because of 9/11 and different things, but we really need to look at some of that. They weren't doing their job. We weren't doing our job on 9/11 as well. We know that Condoleezza Rice had information about things that she should have talked about. The Bush administration had a little too much insight to that possibility. They gave money to the Taliban. I mean, I think what they've done is they put us in such a state of fear to now they've gone to this extreme. And the NSA spying on everyone, it's gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, I think many of us would agree with that. One thing is that Lois Capps, she voted every year to authorize the funding of the military. She's very proud to say that she initially opposed the war in Iraq, which is good. But every year she votes to fund the military, the full spending of the military. Now I understand Lynn Woolsey up in Marin County every year has a 100% peace record, and she votes against the funding because the wars she doesn't consider ethical. And I understand about 1 million people have died over in Iraq. That's a lot more people that died in 9/11. How would you feel? Would you continue the war authorization, the funding military authorization every year as Lois is, or she claims it's to protect the troops? So how give them armor and so forth? Give them. How do you feel about all of that?
I don't agree. I follow with Lynn Woolsey, and I believe that first of all, cut back on our military spending and put more into education and into the veterans and other areas where we need funding. We're spending way too much there. I don't think they need, especially now, we don't need more drones, that's for sure. And I'm pretty much against war, been looking more towards peace in any way possible. Do we need all the weapons of the shielding and things that they had before? I don't think we need that, what they were calling for in the beginning. I was against the Iraq war. I think it's time to bring the troops home. So I think we could save a lot of money. And I would not approve the military budget the same way that Lynn Woolsey did.
Right, you would be more in line with Lynn Woolsey than Lois Capps.
And probably with many other progressive Democrats.
Yeah, well, that's really good to hear. I think a lot of people are. Now, here's another issue that's kind of interesting to me. It seems that our representatives are becoming less accessible to the people these days in their offices. Lois Capps, in the old days, you could just walk into her office, talk with the people, have a coffee or whatever. Other representatives, you can still do that. I understand, like in Sam Farr in Monterey, you can just walk into his office. But now Lois Capps' office has all kinds of signs on the door that because of the Capitol Police advisement that they no longer can accept visitors in their offices. Now, I question whether this is without an appointment. I question if this is really necessary. Lois Capps goes to all kinds of events. I've interviewed her in front of Albertsons. Anybody could do something. So I question about this this is an overreaction perhaps or something to 9/11. How accessible are you planning on being?
Well, I've heard about it. She's not been accessible to me. Not that I only asked one time with a group of people in 2007 when we went back for a march to get out of Iraq, and she was not available to us, so we had to talk to an aide. But I have heard that she's not that accessible from other people. And the other people that I visited in D.C., other representatives, because she wasn't available, there was no problem. We didn't have to have an appointment. You walked in, and you can at least give your card if you want. You can leave your statement. And I actually helped to lobby many of the senators in Congress, and they were all available. So in here, if I was to have my offices here, they'd be open. The doors would be open.
Okay, now, as far as animal issues are concerned, Lois Capps actually has a very good record. She votes pro-animal all the time to protect the wild horses, to protect the, better treatment of animals. And are you aware of the wild horse issue? It was the second most popular issue in America in the 70s, and 50 million acres were designated for wild horses forever to be the principal presence. Well, guess what? About 30 million of those acres have been zeroed out of horses, and now they've been replaced with cattle. So have we become a lawless government? I mean, the law seems really clear, the Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Act. And how do you feel about protection of wild horses and other animals? What are you going to do to help them?
Well, I think it's real unfortunate. I'm probably more the animal lover, so of course I'm not there in Congress to see what could be done or could have been done at the times. I send money, I sign petitions, and try to protect the animals. So I think I'd have to look at that more to see exactly what could happen. And I've seen reports that things have been changing, but I'm not really aware of it. The wild horses is a really sad one. I was very involved in that a long time ago. I thought the land set aside, we trust it's going to be, but we're back to who's really following the laws and who's enforcing them. And then they change over time, and people don't know about it. A lot of citizens, we don't know what's going on, and we're assuming everything's still okay. So I would like to say that I would do my best to keep people informed because of being an environmentalist and an animal person, that when those things came up, I would be working with those groups and what they're doing and report it to people.
Well, it sounds like you've been out there protesting at rallies to close down Diablo nuclear power plant. You've been active, you support the Constitution, you wouldn't just tear away the Constitution and create a law that denies the constitutional right to a fair trial. Lois doesn't seem to have been out there like you have, but is she getting funding from big corporations, and where is your funding coming from?
My funding, whatever I get, is going to come from people like you and who's ever listening out there. If I go to a corporation, I would have to take care of the corporation. This is an office that should be serving the people, and the people should help to support it if they want to. And I don't know where Lois is getting all her money. You can go look at opensecrets.org to find out more. I have some ideas. I've looked at it, but I don't want to judge that. That's up to the people. But she has plenty to win an election or more. So.
And she's not trying to introduce legislation to reform the campaign financing, is she?
That's my number one issue.
Yeah.
Campaign finance reform. Once we can do that, then we'll have change across the board on every single issue. Corporations, big money's running everything. Somebody could buy a midterm. In fact, they just had an article about that recently. Midterms can be bought by people. You used to buy wineries, now you can buy elections.
Right. Now, what about Monsanto? Is one of the most powerful corporations in our country. Basically, Monsanto is producing genetically engineered crops. You know about genetically engineered crops?
Yes.
Monsanto is trying to get legislation through to make it illegal for states to require labeling. So we have the right to know if we're eating genetically altered food. How do you feel about that?
Well, if we'd had more money, we almost won it in California.
Yeah.
We just need more funding. So there we go again, campaign finance reform. If they could not fight it so much, just like we have with fracking,
Right.
oh, it's wonderful, it's clean, it's all that kind of stuff. No, we need to get corporations and their money out, and it's not right that they actually be allowed to not tell the truth about things.
They buy the elections, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and there you are. You've been out there protesting at nuclear power plants, and you're trying to close down Diablo, right?
I believe that Diablo should be closed down especially from all the reports and all the things that we know.
Right.
So it's not like the evidence isn't there. It would be wiser for us to do that now, and especially if we are Santa Barbara's being affected, San Luis Obispo's being affected through air and the different things, tritium. I don't know if I have the name right, but if we're seeing those levels going up and we're seeing a difference, we should close it. But I believe we should close it anyway. We don't need it. We're not getting our power from Diablo Canyon. We just get to be by it. It goes to other places.
Right. And right. And what if we have an earthquake or something? Yeah.
Exactly. I live 15 miles away. I live over the hill from it. So I'm in that border group when the first to go, and they say don't try to take care of these people because they're already gone. I'm in that circle.
Right. Well, so it's up to the people. It's up to the regular people to get good people in office. Otherwise, the corporations buy their way to power. And I'm not convinced that the government's going to reform itself. They're kind of cozy and happy the way things are.
And that's going to take some radical difference. And I've recently been named as the radical candidate by Santa Barbara News Press. And so I guess I should take that name and appreciate it and go to D.C. and make some radical changes. Because if we keep voting the same that we do and keep bringing the same people back, it's all going to be the same. It's time to make a change.
Right. Well, how do you feel about we go after these so-called terrorists like, I don't know, Osama bin Laden or whatever, but what about the Americans? Aren't they ever accountable? Is it just the Arabs, or shouldn't we go after, what about the Bush administration? Should they be held accountable for some of the things they did?
I would like an investigation to that, and I know a lot of people, there'll be people who go, oh, that was then, but about 25 years from now, our children are going to look at that, and it's going to be like talking about Germany and what happened there. They're going to look at the United States. I mean, we're not loved around the country, and we can do better.
Around the world, you mean, yeah?
Oh yeah, around the world. We can do much better. And we need to have people in charge that know how to negotiate. We don't need this John Kerry and his stick out there. No, we really need to be careful.
Well, I don't understand how when we bomb other countries, drop our bombs, that's supposed to make people like us more and make for peace. I mean, I wouldn't like it if my children or my mother were killed. That probably, to me, that makes everything less safe.
None of it makes any sense. And it never made any sense. But they did not listen to us. The people said no to the war. And why didn't it count? There were millions of us that marched. And if that had happened in the 60s, they would have never done the things that they did. But here in the 80s and 90s, or 90s, 2000, they didn't listen to us. They did not listen to the people.
They never do.
So that's why I don't want anybody to give up. We cannot give up. We have to know that people can make a difference. But if we continue to hear, or people are brainwashed by some of the media that they hear, so the media has a great responsibility in this, and some of the media is just mediocre, or they keep the same thing going on and on and on, focusing on something that has nothing really meaningful to do. Instead of empowering people, we could shift this whole media to saying, this is what you can do today. This is what's going on. Sign these petitions, showing people new ways how to do it. I'm a publisher. That's what I talk about in my publication.
Okay, is there, well, you've won my vote. Do you have anything else you'd like to say for our viewers?
remember to vote, because that's really important. And this is a midterm time, and they expect people not to vote. So please get out there, either put your absentee ballot in or vote on June 3rd. And if you want progress and you want change and real activism, vote for Sandra Marshall.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What can you do about the National Defense Authorization Act and to restore our Constitution and the rights of men and women all over our country? Because I think we're living in a climate of fear about terrorism, and it was Adolf Hitler who found terrorists everywhere, and I just don't see that. I see our government, who's killed maybe 1 million people in Iraq, maybe as being a bigger terrorist. Like Mahatma Gandhi said, the wealthier countries exploit the weaker countries. So what do you think about, why can't you follow in the footsteps of Sam Farr and Lynn Wolsey and vote against the funding of these wars every year because they're unethical?
I didn't vote for the Iraq War, and I urged the president to withdraw from Afghanistan at a faster rate. And I'm thankful that we are out of Iraq. And while we have our soldiers fighting there, I want to make sure that they have sufficient funds so that their lives are not endangered because they're there. But I want them to be phased out as quickly as possible.
I hope so. It just seems to me if we didn't fund these wars, the soldiers would have to come home real quick.
Is there any effort to...
Lois, do you feel that hemp should be legalized? Our founding fathers, George Washington, grew it. They made rope out of it. In World War II, the farmers were ordered to grow hemp. Hemp, you cannot get high off of hemp. Would you support legalizing hemp?
I supported marijuana for medical purposes.
Well, this isn't marijuana. Hemp is not marijuana.
Well,
it's not. You can't get high off of it. It's a different variety.
I don't have a position on that because I frankly it hasn't come up before the federal government.
Wouldn't it be wonderful to bring the jobs back to the United States instead of importing the hemp from India and Canada and other places and growing it right in our country, putting Americans to work?
Unfortunately, there's some other sides of the story.
And what about all this business of buying everything made in China? Wouldn't you rather have the companies come back to our country and make things more locally?
I'm a big fan of manufacturing in this country and increasing our manufacturing.
And NAFTA and the WTO really killed manufacturing in our country, and the jobs went over to China.
That's one of the things we find ourselves in now, where we are dependent in ways that we want to.
And I noticed that the prices did not go down when they relocated. Like Walmart said the prices would go down. And when they relocated in China, the prices didn't go down. And so somebody's making more money. It kind of sounds like it to me.
Is there a renewable issue there?
Obama is supporting torture. Our government has just signed the Government Defense Authorization Act that allows the military to arrest citizens. So all the karma, there is justice in the universe because all the enslavement of the animals now is coming back to the people. And I guess that's the karma we have to go through.
I just can't understand why our local wonderful Lois Capps, who's so compassionate towards animals, would sign such a bill that would take away our rights to due process. It seems like a very dangerous thing to do, to give the military that kind of power. And too much power corrupts absolutely. And to take away that kind of check on government power, it seems to me the first road towards dictatorship and tyranny. So I just can't understand. Can you understand how these people like Lois can vote for this bill?
We're going to have to ask her, and we'll be going there later to ask her.
We need to.
I'm going to finish
Okay.
this interview now.
Economically and civil liberties-wise, we are where we're pre-World War II Germany was. Exactly. And we are in a very dangerous place. And it's become a one-party system. And when people voted for Barack Obama, 70% of the country, they wanted a change in every possible way. With regards to our Constitution, the erosion of our civil liberties, and we have been going on the same path. If you read Glenn Greenwald, can I recommend you read Glenn Greenwald, constitutional attorney? He is on the left-leaning, I think, but he wrote with Liberty and Justice for Some, and how for decades there has been a two-tier justice system in this country that has led off the upper government officials and CEOs and banks, and there is this whole prison industry for the common man.
Right.
And so it's like I have voted for you, I've campaigned for you in the past, and I cannot vote for you again. I cannot vote for Barack Obama again. I will pick individuals that I believe in, like a Dennis Kucinich, or a Ralph Nader, or a Ron Paul, who stand up for our Constitution, who adhere to the rule of law, basically. And
But thank you very much for sharing your
Well spoken. You absolutely nailed it.
Well,
These traitors should be put in indefinite detention
Well,
for voting against our Constitution.
it's the upholding of the
Wanna say
Constitution is not, and my husband is an attorney.
I want to make sure that
Let me ask a question.
We're just disgusted and appalled.
Were you? I'll ask you a
You should be
question.
impeached and in jail for breaking our Constitution.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
First of all, I really appreciate the way you care about animals and torture of animals, and you've signed to protect the horses and so forth. I think that somehow what we do to the animals, we do to ourselves. And we have a whole nation where animals are being abused in huge concentration camp, Auschwitz-type conditions. The chickens. And Doris Day, I wrote a letter to the editor, and she wrote an article a week later, and she asked people not to buy anything but free-range chickens. Now, maybe you would possibly consider, I don't know if you would consider, but a lot of people are becoming vegetarians because of the cruelty. Mrs. Basehart out in Montecito, she was the wife of Richard Basehart, the actor. She's a vegetarian. She says there's no other sane way to be.
Okay.
And it would be wonderful if you would consider becoming a vegetarian and being an example. But as far as this National Defense Authorization Act is concerned, I think that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And any government has to be kept in check from becoming too powerful.
totally agree with
Now, if we have anybody in the world who is not given a trial, that makes me nervous, because I think when you take away the bad people's rights, it ends up hitting all of us.
I agree.
And we have, even the Nazi criminals got trials, and we have an administration that's been keeping people in jail indefinitely without a trial. Now, this latest thing, giving the military all this power to call everybody a terrorist, I think if there's evidence against a person, why are they afraid of a trial? So that you sign this act is a shock, I think, to your constituents. Now, what can you do about it?
Why did you
Can you
sign
introduce
it?
a bill to undo it or something?
I have to make choices that are difficult because of the complexity of the bill, and there were many good parts to it, and that's why I voted for it.
What was good about it as compared to taking away all of our liberties?
The authorization for protecting our military, our country.
Our military? Protecting our
It
military?
was the Defense Authorization Act.
Right, but you're protecting the military?
No, it's protecting our country.
But how are you
through the
protecting our
military.
country? You took it away
That
our
was
rights.
one part of it that it was troubling.
Very troubling.
And we need a further debate on it, and I think there's an opportunity for us to do that.
Are you going to introduce a bill to negate that taking away our constitutional rights?
That's something I could do. It's a possibility.
Are you going to?
I haven't decided.
How come you haven't decided?
That seems like that's our number one priority, to keep our rights to a fair trial.
Well, I appreciate hearing from you. I appreciate hearing from you.
And isn't that a very illegal, treasonous
It is.
law, to take away our right to a trial?
It's
and
criminal.
hold
It's
us
a
without
criminal
trial?
offense against the American people.
But in the legislation, American citizens are guaranteed their right to a trial.
But we don't know it
By
is
the
not.
military. By the military.
And I,
No, it's not. According to ACLU, they examined the final bill,
All right.
and they on their website are now saying that that Americans do not have due process, which is the first step to
then
trial.
there's an opportunity for redress, and that's certainly part of our
So will you
our
commit
government
to
as well.
will you commit
no,
to
I'm
your
not gonna
people?
say that right now,
Well,
but
then
I
that
will,
means
I'm happy
you're not
I'm
going to
happy
be
to
doing.
study the issue, and I'll look to my colleagues and see what action is being suggested.
Well, we can't vote for someone who's just going to make
That's your choice.
false
That's
promises.
certainly your choice.
Well,
Yeah.
to me, it's illegal.
I want to make sure I hear from other
Yeah.
people.
Okay.
Students want some picture with you.
You just asked Lois Capps, our congresswoman, to rescind the National Defense Authorization Act. Why did you do that?
Why did I do that? Because how is a rider in a spending bill to override the United States Constitution and take away the Bill of Rights and our right to due process and to be detained whenever it suits whomever the government sees fit? It just doesn't make any sense. And this has been a constant process over several decades. Germany was right before Hitler took over, and Hitler came to power in a perfectly legal way. And that's exactly what is going to prevent from a dictator to step forward and take over at this point.
Already has Obama. Abominable. President Abominable.
That's right. It's a one-party system.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your grandmother hid Jewish people?
My grandmother hid 2 Jewish people during World War II in occupied Holland, while my grandfather was transferred to a Nazi work camp, and she stayed behind with 3 little kids under the age of 5, my mother being one of those kids. And she did what was right, and she couldn't stop talking about it her whole life. I have all the documentation. I have it right here in my home, because I inherited all these documents. But it's like, this is I have always known this. If you study history, study the history of empires, study the history of how dictators rise to power. It's obvious what's going on.
It is,
but we have a one-party system. Our government, but here's another thing that people make the mistake of. Who is the corrupting link in the chain? It's the government. It's our Congress. Our Congress is allowed to be being bought up by special interests, and it's allowed to be. It allows for we have that revolving door between big corporations, big banks, big government, and then it's basically against small business, credit unions, and the individuals. And basically, so revolving door is fascism. We have fascism. That's what we have today. Corporatism, fascism.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, the police people but you can call and make an appointment, and we're happy to see you. Well, I wish it weren't so. I wish it weren't so, but we have to be mindful of their requests.
How come up in Santa Cruz?
I don't want you to have to stand and block the way. Hi.
This is Capps.
Yes, Lois.
We save taxpayers $5 million a year from murdering our horses, and plus the pollution factor. So thank you so much for that. I hope you stay strong on it. We don't want to murder our horses. Yeah, so we went over to Albertsons, where Lois Capps was meeting with people. And I'd first like to say that any representative, mayor, council person who erodes our constitutional rights is a criminal.
That's right.
Okay, they are the criminals. And the criminals are now running our government. And we have to address them with that title. It's no longer honorable. And having said that, I would like Brian Rosen, who filmed this, to talk about we asked her why she voted for it, and she said it was to protect the military. And then we said, protect the military, and we have it on tape. She had made a mistake, and then she said, it's to protect our country. And so we said, well, how is that protecting our country? You're not protecting the people and our rights. And she said, well, I can look into it, and we can amend that or change it. And we said it's already too late, and Brian will take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to second what Brian said, especially about the animals. And as far as our friend Lois goes, and other criminals that are in the Congress and the White House, she will consider looking into doing something about NDAA. Well, it's time for us to consider removing her and those criminals like her.
Yeah! Good job, Dennis.
Representatives!
Our representatives!
Who have taken away our rights!
Who have taken away our rights!
In the National Defense Authorization Act!
In the National Defense Authorization Act!
Again.
Who are the criminals?
Who are the criminals?
They are the criminals!
They are the criminals!
The representatives!
The representatives!
Who have taken away our rights! Authorization Act.
Under the National Defense Authorization Act.
Kate Smith.
My name is Patricia Rosen, and I have very strong opinions about what our country is doing. I don't like the way our presidents say that he would never send our troops out of the country to bomb or do anything to these other countries, and yet he's doing it. And other countries used to like us, but they don't like us anymore. They don't trust us. They don't believe what our president says. And I feel very discouraged about this. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You have to fight and write letters to your president and tell him that you want peace in the world. You don't want any fighting. You don't want any drones flying over these countries and dropping bombs. They're killing innocent women and children. It's not the same if we were there to kill soldiers, which I don't like either. But to send drones over, no one is in these airplanes. He controls it, and he drops these bombs and kills wonderful, innocent people. This is what makes me very, very upset. So I hope that all the people who hear this will please write to the president, write to their congressmen, senators, everyone, and protest. We're here to protest, okay?
Well, are you going to support the president and Lois Capps, who have voted to fund these wars and continue these wars, and who also voted to take away the right to a trial of U.S. citizens, that they can hold them indefinitely? Are you going to support them because of the lesser of the evils?
No. And I always loved Lois Capps. And Lois, if you can hear this, please don't feel this way anymore. Please don't feel that we have to go in and bomb countries. You told me once that all we're there for is to protect the American consulate. But this isn't so, Lois. Will you think about this and change your attitude about everything? We don't want to go into any countries, Lois. Do this for us, the people.
Well, Lois told me that she has to fund the war to protect the troops, but it seems to me that the troops are in danger by having these wars, and if we didn't, they would have to come home if we didn't have the war. Do you agree with her take that we have to fund the war to support the troops?
No. Don't
That's ridiculous.
Even think this way, Lois. No, we want the troops home. We don't want the troops there. We do not want to fund this war. So no, you know better than that, Lois. I just ran into you the other day, and you told me in this shop, remember Bonds, Lois, you promised me you wouldn't fund this war, that you didn't want the war, you would keep our troops in our own country. They're killing innocent women and children, Lois. Okay, Lois, thank you for listening to me.
Now, did we get your name?
My name, and I've always voted for you, Lois. I always believed strongly in you, and I still do. So think these things over very carefully, Lois. You're welcome.
My name is John Amadon, and I live in Albany, New York. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I served honorably from 1965 to 1969, and I'm a member of Veterans for Peace.
And the reason you're here today, you're being charged with a crime by the U.S. government.
That's correct.
Don't you feel the government itself is the one committing the crime and breaking the Constitution of the United States? And can you give us your take on this?
Yes, I was upholding the law, performing civil resistance. As a citizen of the United States, I am obliged by the Nuremberg tribunals, the Hague Convention, the UN Charter, to bring it to my attention when there is a criminal violation. The Minuteman III missile system is a first strike nuclear weapons system. We are obligated to dismantle these first strike nuclear weapons systems and our nuclear weapons under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the other laws I just previously mentioned, also including the UN Charter. Our weapons systems endanger the world, literally. There is no first strike capacity that does anything except ensure a second strike. So once those missiles are launched, we will be waiting for the return fire. The world will end as we know it.
Well, how are we have a government that's out of control now, that doesn't obey the Constitution of the United States, and they just recently even passed a law that they can, National Defense Authorization Act, they can hold citizens indefinitely without trial. Now, the Constitution prohibits that, and the only way for them to change the Constitution is to amend the Constitution, and they don't have the power to even pass those laws under the Constitution, but they're doing it anyway. So how are we going to get our government to actually follow the law?
It is always a very important question that you're asking, and tricky to get the government to follow the law, since government are known to abuse the law. I don't fully have that answer. One of the ways that we were working on it here today is by creating a dialogue in court, since the judicial branch of the government is obligated to respond to us. And so we've taken our demands and grievances and requests to both the executive branch and the legislative branch, and now we're here creating a dialogue with the judicial branch and hopefully with the larger public, so that they understand that we need the restoration of habeas corpus, that is vital and essential. We should not be a third world nation where people can be disappeared. And we can now, as you mentioned, with the National Defense Authorization Act, be disappeared.
Unbelievable that our Constitution that prohibits the government from doing these kind of things, they just completely disregard it. And now they can take us away, torture us. They got away with torture under Bush. They can get away with virtually anything. So you're here standing up against this tyranny, and yet you're the one who's on trial.
That's correct. And as a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That's what I'm doing here today. Sometimes you have to throw, I'm paraphrasing a quote, but you do have to throw your body on the gears and levers of the machine when it becomes so odious. And I wish I could remember the author, but I don't. In any case, we're throwing our bodies on the gears and levers of the machine to the best of our ability. We need to make it stop.
Well, tell me what your name is and why you're here.
My name is Cynthia Papermaster. I'm from Berkeley, California. This is Jiminy Winks, my service animal. The U.S. government and this administration are out of control in terms of taking away our rights. The NDAA, indefinite detention provisions, wipes out our right to due process. It's a constitutional right that we have had since the founding of this country, and it's now gone. And I think every citizen has the duty to speak out against this and to overthrow the reign, the tyrannical reign of this government that has resulted from the Obama administration. I'm personally one of...
Hello, my name is Mark, and I believe that we can do better in this world. We don't have to be having thousands of nuclear warheads. We don't have to be sending missiles overseas. We can have peace if we have the will for it. And so I followed my conscience and stood up and said no. No more testing, no more launching, no more nuclear weapons. And I believe if enough people join that consciousness and that will, we can change things. And it doesn't have to take that long if people just join us. So.
And I'll just conclude by saying that this trial is taking place in a federal bankruptcy court, and our nuclear policy is bankrupt. It deserves to be reorganized and done away with, and we've gone too long with looking at nuclear weapons as business as usual. These are weapons that even in a small regional war would affect the entire globe and could kill not just millions of people, but billions of people. In fact, could be an extinction event for all humanity. So that's one sense, I think, in which the defendants are standing up for humanity at this time. And the other sense in which it's appropriate that this be in a bankruptcy court is that so many of our human needs are not being met globally. People are dying of starvation. people don't have adequate and appropriate drinking water, clean, clear drinking water. People even here in Santa Barbara are homeless, and yet we're spending $50 to $70 billion a year on our nuclear weapons and their delivery systems. And it is obscene. We should be sending our children to school, doing away with college loans, and building a more decent world for all of us. So that's why we're here. Thank you for being here.
I've tried to get a proposal in to, there are millions of people in the state of California that aren't allowed to use clotheslines because they live in apartment complexes. And to me, you know, that's one of the most important things to do for the environment,
Absolutely.
using clotheslines.
I do it myself.
Well, that's great, but you know, all I got back was I was supposed to like submit the entire legislation.
In fact, in my condo association, they made me take it down too. So I've gone through that same thing.
Well, to me, it's a violation of our constitutional rights to liberty. We pay our rent, and we should be allowed to at least hold our clothes. And I think poor people are held hostage by the economics of it all.
Right.
And I submit.
Hannah Beth, what do you think about Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant?
Well, I think that we should life expectancy, so we can look. It's a sunny day. We have 300 days of sunshine here in Southern California. We should be creating renewable energy from this sunshine, from the wind that we get out in the Oxnard Plain. Man, that stuff will blow you over. Why don't we use that to make electricity?
Right.
Why don't we find ways and alternatives for all of these things?
Right.
So that's where I stand.
There's a new anti-Diablo movement going. We'll definitely endorse
Keep me posted.
you. Yes.
Keep me posted on what you're doing. I think it's very worrisome when we're finding, for example, like at San Onofre. There are serious problems there. They don't know why the problems exist, so they've shut it down. Well, it does affect about, 20% of our state's energy. So quickly, let's build, we've got photovoltaics. We're spend some money doing research to improve their efficiencies and get them out there and start protecting against the things that have created our global climate change. That is, you can't live just about anywhere and not have had its impacts.
Yes.
Down in Texas, those folks have. I support the fact that we treat our animals inhumanely. Frequently with dairy farmers and with the various farmers, they have caged their animals. It's a better opportunity for them, to create greater profits and things of that sort. And the people of the state, to their credit, passed an initiative to ban that kind of behavior. I think we can do better. I also am very distressed by the way we treat our fellow human beings. I think the fact that we have been through a series of wars and have decimated other countries and decimated our soldiers who come home so damaged that they are committing suicide at ungodly rates. So I think we just have to I think it's all part of a different perspective. And that perspective is that we really need to recognize that we come before profit. That while it's understandable that people need money to live and that in order to have food and so forth, but we are not being kind because we are focusing almost exclusively on profit and not taking a look at the human element, not taking a look at how all this impacts the earth and our fellow creatures, as you say. I think we have to kind of take a good hard look at how we live and what motivates us to do what we do. We're a community. We are people who have to live together. We live amongst all the creatures of the earth, and I think that we need that for our own benefit. We have to start looking at it from a more humane and friendlier perspective, and put that above just the singular profit motive that I think has created many of the problems that we're facing today.
Years ago, I wrote a letter to the editor and.
Well, I'm not much of a meat eater anyway, so I'm not sure that that's a good question for me. I think that we have to look as we balance out the economic factors that drive our communities, the fact that we need to create jobs, people need to eat, that we do it in the most humane way possible. And I don't think we've really given that kind of consideration. And I think the public does support that. Again, take a look at the initiative that passed just a couple years ago. So a lot of this is a balancing act. I'm worried, frankly, about what we're doing with food. What's going into the food that we eat? What's going into the soil? I mean, our health is so important. And I just think we need to start asking those questions.
Well, the city of Carpinteria